Welcome back to the channel where before we get to the topic of today's video, like both Sonic the Hedgehog and Freddy Fazbear, I am now legally allowed to drive. It's been something that I've been trying to do throughout these weeks, and now it's finally done. Yeah, okay, but going back to the topic of the video, I guess. Around 2 weeks ago, I played the open network test of Sonic Crossworld, and I had fun with it. The game, because I haven't really played much racing games, it was a bit difficult to get into, but overall, I did really have fun with it. But because but because of my obsession with a certain video game series, after the open network test ended, I went to play Five Blast at Freddy's. The FNAF's own racing game, and yeah, I am still excited for the game, but I, I do hope with the extra bit of time that they have, hopefully they're able to make it the best it can. I do hope that the game turns out good. But yeah, one idea I kind of had when playing Five Nights at Freddy's was, well, one of the big selling points of Sonic Crossroads is the crossover aspect. Adding characters like Hatsune Miku, Joker from Persona 5, and even Minecraft Steve. So I had an idea. What if Five Nights at Freddy's had its own crossovers? Okay, so first, this video is kind of just meant to be a quick, simple, like, idea, like, of what if Five Nights at Freddy's had crossovers. So I'm not gonna go into full details and explanations. And although I have like 4 rows, which I'm gonna be putting some of these like ideas. If any of the games or like series were to be added as a crossover, it would most likely just be like the top row. But this is just kind of like just like a silly idea, I guess. So yeah, I guess let's get started. All right, I guess to begin, we'll talk about the most possible crossover ideas. Then I guess after that we'll talk about the less possible, like, ideas that I feel like could happen, but yeah, just like less possible. Slight chance, like I feel like, if the game turns out to be like very big, or like if they want to be very ambitious, these ideas could work. But yeah, most likely not. And then finally, there's a lesser chance. Yeah, I don't know, just like some random ideas, I guess. Exactly would be the most possible options for crossovers for Five Nights at Freddy's, I believe, would just be Scott Games. And I know FNAF is obviously a Scott game, or like a main game made by Scott Cawthon, but I'm talking about more of his past games. An example? The Desolate Hope. So okay, so I'm actually quite a big fan of The Desolate Hope. I personally think it's one of Scott's best looking games. I even sometimes use the background or like the screenshots of the game as like my wallpaper, because the game just looks so good. So my main character is actually based off of one of the characters from The Desolate Hope. DC09 is his name. Originally I was gonna actually use like just like PNGs of the in-game sprite, but I felt like I could make it kind of my own with like these different expressions. But yeah, I feel like we could kind of like, for like the Tesla Hope, we could see kind of like the different various like derelicts. Okay, and continuing on, I feel like other ideas that could possibly work would be Chippers and Son, obviously, and Doofus. So the reason why these are like the most possible options, I feel like, is because, well, obviously Scott owns these characters, right? These are all Scott characters. Also, by the way, Doofus was just there because, as a little joke. They could like Scott could add any of his characters. Most likely it would just be like Shippers and Sons, and maybe the Desolate Hope characters like Coffee. Since Coffee does appear in a lot of like a lot of the FNAF games in like cameo roles. Like I'm pretty sure he was in Help Wanted and even in Secret of the Mimic. Um, but having them as kind of more like playable characters in a FNAF crossover, I feel like could introduce a lot of people to some of Scott's older games in a much better way. And if there's like some like interest in like the characters again, which I hope there is, perhaps maybe Scott can make another Desolate Hope, because I really want Scott to make a new Desolate Hopes game, like the Desolate Abandoned. I believe the third one was gonna be before he made FNAF. But yeah, something like that would be really, really, really cool. So yeah, I feel like those are the most likely options, or the most like the ones that are most likely gonna be in Five Nights at Freddy's if they do decide to like introduce different characters. Since obviously Scott owns them and all. But yeah, that's it. So continuing on for the less possible options, kind of like how the most possible were all Scott games, the less possible are also all kind of related as well. That being mascot horror games. And although I'm not really a fan of like the term or like the group of mascot horrors, I feel like mascot horror games have a possibility of you joining the roster for Five Nights at Freddy's if like Click Team or Scott decide to ask them, some of these the developers, to like collaborate. I feel like they will definitely allow some of their IPs to join the roster of Freddy in the game. So obviously the big option would probably be Bendy, because as a fan of Bendy, I would love to see Bendy and Freddy like writing a role together. Maybe some maps being like Joey Drew Studios. I feel like that's something that could be cool. And honestly, this could be any like mascot horror game like Hello Neighbor and stuff. So the ones I showed here aren't really like number one that I feel like needs to be added. But yeah. Then I also added Indigo Park. I thought the game was okay. I mean, it was just only the first chapter, and I feel like even though there's still a lot of it needs to do to improve, it was pretty good, and I feel like it has a lot of potential. And then, although I'm not too big of a fan of the Poppy Playtime franchise, I do think it has kind of gained like a following, or like it has kind of like it's kind of big enough to be a part of like grouped up with Freddy in the game, I think. And then last year I put so yeah, those were so I feel like the mascot horror games, like there's a chance for those type of games to be added. Like I said, less likely, less possible, but I feel like if Scott really wanted to, I think the other studios will definitely allow them to appear in like maybe DLC or like cameo roles. But yeah, that was less possible. Okay, so now we're gonna be talking about the slight chance options. These are options that I kind of feel like don't like, no matter what, like there is a slight chance. Even if Scott was looking out for like trying to collaborate with other like, or like add collabs to Five Nights at Freddy's. Like I said, there's a slight chance, but most likely not. He'll most likely either gonna go with just like the first row, maybe the second row, but there's like small chance for the third row, but I honestly don't think so. Which is indie games. Which FNAF is actually kind of at the very least I consider FNAF to be one of the biggest or most influential indie franchises. So, and I already know like the mascot horror games there are also technically indie games. Well, they are indie games. But like I feel like sometimes the FNAF kind of like always grouped up with mascot horrors. Um, when I feel like FNAF has kind of a big influence, like not just mascot horror games, but with other. I feel like FNAF could be seen side by side with other big franchises of indie games. So some options I have here, obviously there's a bunch more like this, like not just these options, but some that I've got here are like Undertale. I feel like with Undertale, they could add like some of like the like I don't know, it could be Undertale and Deltarune characters. And like I feel like they both have mutual respect with each other, Toby Fox and Scott. So I think maybe who knows, maybe this Toby will allow some Undertale characters. But I also put here Cuphead and Shovel Knight. I was just kind of putting some random indie games that I thought of. Hollow Knight, a game that I recently played. Um, maybe Scott could ask Team Cherry, I believe. Hey, would you like for a collaboration of some kind? I know that Shovel Knight likes to collaborate with other, or at the very least, I'm pretty certain they like collaborating with a bunch of other IPs or other games, adding Shovel Knight in wherever, like Fall Guys, I believe, and Super Smash Bros. So maybe like maybe that wouldn't be too hard for Scott to get some permission or like some like a deal for Five Nights at Freddy's. But yeah, I feel like since FNAF is like one of the biggest indie games, one of the big indie game franchises that exist out now, adding other indie game franchises could, like, be a good idea. Less likely though. I feel like more like the first two columns right there. But yeah, I feel like it's something that would be cool if it happens. So for the final row, I was just thinking, because of how big FNAF has gotten, and the connections that Scott has made throughout the years, would it be possible if we get stuff like horror movie IPs? Now, would something like this happen? Most likely not, because although Scott does have connections like with Blumhouse and whatnot, I feel like he will probably only stick with video games, and I just feel like they wouldn't really like match. But stuff like Megan, I think, if the game came out before Megan 2, 2.0, um, then I feel like it could have been like seen, it could have been like a very good marketing like tactic, I guess. But yeah, no, I thought it was a neat idea if they like because like or like it doesn't even have to be just Blumhouse stuff. It could be also other game franchises, like other horror IPs or like maybe AAA horror. But most likely not. Hmm. Yeah. This was just meant to be a kind of a short video, just to talk about what if Five Last at Freddy included crossovers similar to Sonic. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Right now it's very late for me. I'm kind of tired right now, so if I sound a bit tired, that's why. This kind of took me a bit too long to make. Honestly, it was supposed to come out like a week ago, but with stuff happening, I don't know. Also, yeah, I still have to finish I'm working on like the ending of both the main Sonic Mania and also Bendy the Dark on Bendy the Lone Wolf. So hopefully that should be coming out soon. I think, I don't know, but for now I'm also playing Hollow Knight Silk Song. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, hopefully things go well. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. And goodbye.